Okay. Zuhi dugma la'achana gedola rechav mod. This is an example for type of preparation that is required. Expansive version is required. Ketfil yom noraim. In other words, just as we would prepare for high holidays, if you were to show up. Remember that idea? You were to show up last minute. You're running late, and you show up for Rosh Hashanah davening, Yom Kippur davening. You're still going to give it your all when you get there. That is the example that we want to use for our regular everyday tefillah. K'tzatz machshav yuchal la'asos hachana me'ein zu, lizchonen ladimyon, la'achshav al tzorz ma'ay marashur. L'fanav pa'amim rabos b'zman nikar kodem, kodem shenagid l'ma'aseh, v'az kasher yamod lispal, when you get up to daven, tiyeh kavanasah sedura lo mamash me'eleh, then your tefillah is sedura on its own, v'yira orot b'tfilato, and you'll see light in your tefillah. The source of this tefillah, of this preparation in Chazal, it's Gemara in Brachos Tezvav. You see what we're up to? 333? Okay. One who wants to receive 333. One who wants to receive the Ol Malchus Shamayim, the yoke of heaven. Clear your heart, wash your hands right, and place tefillin on. V'yikra Kriya Shema, read the Shema. V'yispal Zuhi, and then you'll daven. And Zuhi Malchus Shamayim Shlema. That's how you achieve Kabbalah of reception of the yoke of heaven, of the Malchus, the kingdom of Hashem. Rabbi Chia Barabba. Sorry. Rabbi Chia Barabba. Chia Barabba says, Rabbi Yochanan, Kol Hanifnet, anyone who clears their heart, the no-tel yad of maniach tefillin, it's as if you built the altar. You brought a carbon on that altar. So the idea is that preparing for davening is almost like building an altar. And this is difficult. If your hands are not clean, if your body's not clean, how can you daven Shema? How can you recite the Shema? Obviously, we're not just talking about washing your hands. It's not just taking a bath, right? But rather, there's an establishment of the fulfillment of a mitzvah. That outside of physical cleanliness is a spiritual preparation that has to go into effect before you're supposed to daven. Kamo, mashallah Gemara, like the parable in the following Gemara. One who builds an altar and brings a carbon. You can't compare one who offers a carbon on mizbech to one who actually builds and prepares the mizbech itself. If you build the mizbech with your own hands, that's a different kind of offering. Even though we're not talking about building the altar in the Beis HaMikdash, because that's not in our hands right now, because there is a separate mitzvah the Rambam talks about building the Beis HaMikdash. One of the 613 is to build the Beis HaBechira. However, even when the Beis HaMikdash was not intact and we were allowed to bring altars, in a mitzvah, we're building a mizbeach itself wasn't the mitzvah. There was a special aspect to constructing your own mizbeach. When something goes into and you build that altar for yourself. That's how one of the advantages, we have to say something good about the yeshiva downstairs, is that they build tables, they build their own desks to learn on, which is a very nice thing. They don't put holes in those desks. Whenever you prepare and you organize your machshava, then you want to have proper preparation, you could actually build the altar that you're going to daven on. I mean, that's much better than walking into a ready-made mizbeach. Your heart was already filled with emotion. I've been working on this for days, and imagine what it feels like to offer a carbon on such an altar. Yes, a carbon on Mesiras Nefesh. I went to the store and I measured it. There's no comparing a carbon where you prepared it you got it ready for that moment versus you went and paid someone to do it. One of the sales pitches you have. Yeah.
I was just going to say that, but then we say that the third base of Mikdash is just going to come down.
Right. So two things. So I guess one is the third base of Mikdash. There's an idea that it's already made. That's Machlokes Rishonim, Rambam, Ravid, I believe, Rambam and Rashi. Also, the Tosfos way in as well. As to whether the base of Mikdash is already ready and will just drop down, is it built in fire? And we reflect this in one of the versions of the Tefillah, Nachem, we say on Tisha B'Av, that you destroy it in fire and you rebuild it in fire. The other possibility is that we have to construct it. The Rambam says that one of the telltale signs that we're dealing with the real Mashiach is that he's going to organize the rebuilding the temple. He's not going to announce God already, and then it's just going to fall down. There's human initiative. We have to build it. So that's a Machlokes Rishonim. Either way, the construction of the Mikdash, which is pre-constructed in Shamayim, is still a product of our actions and our deserving it. So in other words, we prepare the world. Still, we have to make the foundation ready so it can fall on it, so it can drop down and into the world. Yeah, there is a pasuk says B'itach Yishena. I can bring the Mashiach in its time, or I can rush the Mashiach. But the question is it time? Will we deserve it in its time anyway? Is that like inevitable? Like what happens there? Is our bechira taken away? I don't know. Okay. The chen hu in Kabbalah. Okay. That's Kabbalah Shemaim. Shirak asher eno chotef es kriya shema betfila umechin atzmo kodem hachana deraba. If I prepare myself with great hachana, mischanein mitchonein machshev latzmo mashatid hu lamod lifnei Hashchina Hakadosha hari mamad zet tzarich kedusha utahara. That requires purity, cleanliness. Reish is called nekiyot haguf. At the beginning of cleanliness of the body, being physically clean is the first step towards spiritual cleanliness. And even in your heart and your thoughts, you're going to add purity onto the purity. And fear onto your fear. You've already painted the picture on your heart of what that ma'amad, of what that assembly, that prayer looks like. It's already like scripted. It's already been written in pencil. Now you have to kind of make it permanent ink. And then at that point, your kavana is complete in your tefillah. And that's the action of preparation that is mentioned in Chazal. And as long as you prepare for that tefillah, you'll be zocha to receiving the Olmach Shemayim. I'm reminded of Yosef Mendelovich's story where he was in prison and he painted on the walls the picture of the candles, right? The Shabbos candles. So that idea of the tzir belibo, that's part of the hachana. So when you actually get there, it means something. This is true for preparation for Olam Haba, that to the extent that you're prepared for Olam Haba with the values in this world, it's an easy transition. So the Chazal say it's like pulling a hair out of milk, right? I guess that was a big problem back then. The hair used to fall. They didn't have hair nets, I don't know. But pulling a hair out of milk is so easy. Just it doesn't hurt. So the neshama is going to come out of this life if we're prepared, and it'll go right into the next world, and it'll be simple. Same thing is true with the base Mikdash. Yeah.
But washing hands and the body and also can be physical too.
It is physical, yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
So it's spiritually and physically.
Right. So he says you have to start with the physical because it's the first step towards the tziyur, the spiritual preparation. Yeah, they're both important.
And another, this is a question. A person who is in jail, and according with all who is studying the Gemara, that we can davening in a place where it's smelling or smell and everything. So what happened with people who is in?
So if you're in a place where you can't daven, you can't daven. There's nothing to do about it.
So they don't have to do it.
you would not be allowed to say Shem Hashem, and you wouldn't be able to. You would not be allowed to if there's a constant smell. There's a story about I don't know if I hope that prisons don't constantly smell horrible. That would be awful if it did. Right? It would be right. I mean, again, everything's relative. Like if we're talking about mamash, like open toilets and there's nothing flushed, and it would be a problem to daven there, right? But if it's modern plumbing and the toilets are flushed and there's no active smell, then you should daven. There's a story about Reb Zusha and Reb Elimelech that when they wanted to understand the plight of the commoner, so they would go around panhandling and asking for tzedakah, and eventually they got thrown into prison. And as they were there in prison, Zusha says to his brother, "This is what we're supposed to do. They have a bucket as the toilet sitting in the corner. We can't daven here." So Elimelech says, "Look, God says to daven when you can. It's the same God who commands you not to daven when you can't. In other words, by not davening, we're fulfilling Hashem's will right now." So this idea gave them such his arus, inspired them so deeply. They started to sing and dance, and they were very inspired by that idea that God placed them in this circumstance. And they're dancing around, and the evil warden says, "Well, why are these Jews so happy?" And all the prisoners are now dancing. Says, and all they could say, they couldn't even articulate it. It was so brimming with simcha. They said that the bucket, it's bringing us joy. Said, if that bucket is bringing those Jews so happy, take it out. And they took the bucket out of there. And then Reb Zusha says, "Now, my brother, we can daven." That's the story. So I don't know if you could uninstall a toilet, but it's a good mushal about what Hashem wants from us when he seemingly does not want anything from us. Yeah, put something over it. Why not? Cover it up, stand 4 amos away.
Do you want to sleep out
My
under
kids,
that after it's covered the toilet?
my kids complain saying, "Why does it have to be that shoot? Why you 26?" This is a special place that you don't have to worry about open doors, stocking, anything.
You're talking about where? In shul?
Yeah, no, my kids complain that why do I have to come to shul to daven every day? They say because it's a special place. In the
That's
meantime,
fine.
Hashem give us the light and we can do it. So we can do it in that place or see.
Yeah, so if you find yourself in a matzav where you can't do that, then you have to do what you can to distance yourself, cover it up. There's a Shulchan Aruch that tells us what to do. And then you keep adding on. Good. You've already made the image clear. And now all you have to do is fill it in with permanent ink. And they tell a story. Maran Hariz Zal. Now, who's the Riz? It's the Grizz. Sort of, who does it say in English?
Briska Rav.
The Riska Rav?
Briska.
Oh, the Brisker. Yeah. So this is Rav Soloveitchik. Yeah, right. Right, the Grizz. They say the Riz. The Grizz says that yeah. The Grizz is the yeah, well, because Gimel is Gaon. So sometimes they write Grizz, Rabbi Yitzchak Zev Halevi Soloveitchik. Right? So, or known also as Ravelvel Soloveitchik. So there you go. That's the Grizz. So his well, that's not no, Briskers don't no, so
Oh, she will just see the picture and know that.
She put the picture away and doesn't know where it
Oh,
is.
look, I love you.
anyway, so his right. So anyway, so his father is Chaim, right? Anyway, so from his descendants, of course, you have Rav Soloveitchik, you have all the Soloveitchik family. So what does the Grizz say? It's a story that he said about himself. He prepares for Havdalah several hours beforehand. You didn't see that the Grizz was sitting there preparing for Avdallah in his mind. You daven Marav. And afterwards, he was talking. Before that, he was talking with other rabbis. And since we can't plunge the depth of his heart, we have no idea what he's thinking of. In other words, what that meant was that he was thinking about processing the idea, preparing before that point. The Amshin of a Rebbe is famous for preparing for mitzvahs for a long time, so much so that his Havdalah wouldn't take place till Tuesday, right? His Mishlach Manos is done the day after Purim. He's preparing. Obviously, Shabbos takes on early, but Shabbos goes a whole week in terms of the beginning of the process of Shabbos, the end of Shabbos. So there are people like this who can sit and prepare all the time. If you ever watch his tish, you watch how he eats. Every bite of food, he's thinking about what part of my body am I nourishing with each morsel, with each bite as a kavana. So mashal arofe, like a doctor, konen lo liyom ploni nituach kasha. Let's say he's preparing for a difficult surgery one day that he has to perform. It's confusing, it's difficult, it's dangerous. When the day of the surgery comes, even if the surgery is afternoon, even in the morning, his mind is thinking about that surgery. It's a scary thing to have that responsibility. So even if you were to observe that doctor, you wouldn't see anything different in their conduct. It looks like they're eating regularly, do their regular work, very regularly, driving to work, speaking to people, in his heart. He's going to prepare for that surgery afterwards. So even if to the outsider, it appears as if they're business as usual, in their heart, they're thinking about that big surgery they have later in the day. Remember the days when you would have tests in school and you have classes in the morning, you're thinking, and you're making your way through the thing, but you're thinking about the test all the time, right? And sometimes you can sneak out a little thing and try to prepare for that test during another class. But the point is, your mind is on that big event later. So the same thing is true with what they would say with the Grizz. Havdalah for him was like a difficult surgery. It's because he had to surgically remove himself from Shabbos. Havdalah has in it great wisdom. He was already engaged in the lofty concept, the principle of separating oneself from holiness and cholan to mundane. So again, that's hard to relate to, but I guess the concept of kedusha and chol, of those separate values in the world, understood on a high level, would take a lot of preparation beforehand.
I thought you couldn't do that. I thought you couldn't take out the Havdalah things until after you.
He wasn't.
said Mara.
It was in his head. He was saying pretty soon, the anxiety of leaving Shabbos. So what am I supposed to do? You're not allowed to take out the physical candle or the other things. That would be achana, that would be muksa. Absolutely. But what we're describing is that for whatever reason, for him, the avoda of preparing for Havdalah in advance was a lengthy process of mental and emotional preparation for that separation. I suppose. Well, he's thinking about the concept of Kodesh and Chol. Right.
I think.
Right. Well, that's if he were to prepare, actually, if you take out the candle. But he was thinking about the notion of Shabbos. What is Kodesh? What is Kedusha that I'm in now? What does it mean that pretty soon I'm not going to be in Kedusha? I think that's what we're describing here. And by the way, it also could have been after Shabbos was ending, he was still sitting on thinking of that idea. We don't know when he did this. So we tend to rush out of Shabbos right away and do Havdalah because it's a heter. You got to do it. So you got to make the movie. You got to get it on time. So,
I told my kids on Shabbos we have to be like before Shabbos, like thinking ahead and about ending Shabbos.
But I don't think it's wrong to think about, even on Shabbos, the differences between Kodesh and Chol. That's a very there's a powerful Israeli song by Shuli Rand, who's one of the great Hasidic modern day Hasidic musicians, and he partners a lot with the secular musicians also. So there's one called Ben Kodesh L'Chol. Him and one of the most famous secular musicians. They talk about it's very powerful. Talk about partnership between those who have taken on the yoke of Judaism and those who are not doing so. In secular society, Israeli society, and religious society, and how the two work together. But it's called Ben Kodesh L'Chol. You should watch the video. Okay, so now we could come back to our Inyan. What do we do to be successful at tefillah that comes to us when we're on the way? So we talked about preparing for tefillah in the right place, when you're sitting near makom, when all is well. But what about in a moment of travel or insecurity, in time when I can't be in my place to daven, when I have to daven we talked about in prison, on traveling on an airplane, when I have to daven on a sick day and I'm at home, right? What are we supposed to do in those moments when we're in an unusual place? This past Sunday, we had a group of people who went to the forest and we had a minyan. Okay, what was the point of that shtick? Why do we do that? Because every now and then a Ben Torah has to gather their spiritual and emotional strength and go to the sea and to be mitzbodei, talk to Hashem in a place of inspiration. You go to a place that you find beautiful in nature, right? And you talk to God and you sit and you gather your thoughts. Shochel mitamel, and they would also they would swim, they would play, machazeket gufo l'shemayim, strengthen their body, exercise, etc. So 5:30 in the morning, they get themselves ready. They gather their items. They get on the bus. This is talking about a school trip. 5:45. 5:45. And he remembers, wait a minute, I'm traveling, but Shkia is at sunsets at 6. He's coming back from a tiyul. And they're packed up, they're on the bus, and it's 5:45. And remember, Shkia is 6. And I haven't done mincha. What do I do? I put my items in the ground. I wash my hands in the sand. Now and I get up to daven. Come and think about this scenario where you find yourself and you can't wash properly. You don't have a sink. You're not in your shul. You're not with a minyan. So, what if you're not careful? Aren't you worried that maybe you're waiting for a bus, but you're worried that if you don't hurry up with your mincha, the bus is going to leave, right? So it's not going to be the best davening. You're in the Grand Central Station. You're standing in. We already said you can't daven near a toilet. So Grand Central Station is one big toilet, but you're going to daven in the Tachana Merkazi, and the bus is going to leave. What is the? How do you focus in a moment when you're rushed, when you're not in your element? Kodem Sofasman, Ledugma Bisha Arba V'Chetzi, 4:30. Let's say 4:30. As far as you understand, at 4:30 you're already thinking about it. Even if you're in the water. I realize at 4:30, when I have an hour and a half, I'm going to have to daven somewhere else. I have a special tefillah. It's the one and only mincha that will happen in this moment in history. It's the only time I'll ever have this davening again. You start to think how special that's going to be. Where am I going to be when the time comes? Where am I going to daven? And maybe, just maybe, the place where I'm going to daven is I am the only person in history who will ever be able to daven in that place, in that time. Think about that for a moment, right? Like, okay, so you're on your tiyul. He's described people swimming in the pool, and you're getting ready to pack up your stuff. You're going to go on the bus. 6 o'clock is shkia. So you're thinking about it at 5:55. Oh, it's shkia, better daven. That's not going to be much for tefillah, especially if the bus is coming. So when do you start thinking about it? Well, 4:30. And now you realize that when I get out of the pool, I'm going to dry up. I'm going to have to find some time on the side to daven. And it's going to be really special because this is I'm the only person who ever is going to do a tikkun on the side of the road. You ever think about, you ever daven somewhere and you're like, am I the only person who's ever davened here? I had that machshava. Where you say your brachos. Right? You're fixing the world in that place. You're being masak in the olam, right? So am I the only one who's ever done it? We had that experience. We were in Germany, and we visited the conference center there, where they planned the final solution, Fancy, and it was skill. Like 5 minutes, we're like, oh no, we got to daven. So we walked outside, and we realized that we have to actually face the conference center to daven. So we kind of moved aside and faced the water. It's a big lake called Fancy. It's very beautiful, actually. So it was a lake house, a resort, place where rich people hung out. So it was like a mansion on the side of the water. Vansee, Wansee, Vansee it's called. And there's a big Vansee lake, a small and gross on Vansee is where it was, the big lake. So I realized at the moment, like it was just such an unpleasant feeling, but I realized we're probably the only people in years who are making $1 million here. I mean, maybe not, maybe other tourists have done that at that point, but it was really special to have a group of rabbis to daven there, So you're about to fix one corner of the universe that nobody else has ever done this year, right? And especially because for me, that was like, tefillah is about machshava, it's about your thoughts, your heart. And that was, I said, that's one of the most evil places in the world in terms of machshava, right? No one was murdered on the floor there, right? There's no bloodshed in that building. But it was in machshava, it was the planning of something so treacherous. So it was a place with tremendous machshava koach. So how can I use, there's this tremendous capacity here to use your thoughts to create good or to create something, to generate. So that was what I tried to focus on. And it was interesting experience. At the very least, I get a story out of it.
When we all gathered to daven, when we went, my year in Israel went to Poland, and went to Auschwitz and all the places, and when we davened there, that's what it felt like. We were kind of fixing it piece by piece.
Yeah, you're doing something to fix a corner of the universe. And so imagine now you're rushed. You don't have a lot of time, and you're going to have to daven somewhere in some way. So if you wait till the last minute, you don't even get a chance to prepare this idea. How am I going to say slach lanu? Where am I going to need to ask for forgiveness? What am I going to focus on in my refuah prayer? What am I going to add in Shmakolenu? Once these thoughts are now percolating in my head, I'm going to get out of the water 10 minutes earlier. The bus shouldn't have to be delayed when someone who is doing a davening. There shouldn't be a delay process. Yatrid otoho. The autobus shouldn't disturb my davening and make me rush my tefillah. I'm also going to be able to have the ability to find a quiet place, below mafreim, without distraction. And I won't have a yitrich was then. I'll trouble myself to do this. Az kasher yourself self. Yagias man tefillah. And when time of tefillah actually comes, yadavar toch hergish nifla. It's going to be incredible prayer with great emotion. Shadar on the contrary, lo rak shlo yitchanein with pal b'chipazon. It's not just that not only did I not have to rush my prayer, elo med this lefanov chavia nidira muchadet mina. There'll be an atmosphere which is pleasant, special, and unique. B'tpal tefillah me'ula, and I'm davening a prayer that I've never davened before. So it's pal kamosa kivar zman rav, a tefillah that was never done like this in history, right? It's going to be the greatest prayer in history, right? So but it's not just an exaggeration. It will be also. It will be beautiful because you will have taken the time to set it aside, to prepare the words, to prepare your place, your setting, your mind, and your emotions. And nobody else is going to have to. Nobody's going to be able to rush you then. And now, Korei Na'im. I guess read this pleasant thought. What was it saying? Dear readers. Oh, Korei, you are the Korei. Korei Na'im. Na'im is interesting, dear. So, dear reader, even though I gave this, I laid it out before you with very simple parables. There's really a great, deep, profound idea here. Shows sort of a sam hanurah. Shahar begdom kedosh elyon. Shem yadu hamash malos apshuta shalom yidol Hashem. There are many great people who came before us who understood the power, the magnitude of a simple standing before God. In a few moments, we're going to fly to the moon. Right? It's more modern, more contemporary. Yeah. After the moon landing. Yeah. Yeah. Right.
It's like someone who's
Scheduled to fly to the moon, right? But not recently, not with no one who's flown to space in the last year or so, no, because he passed away before that. If you had a trip to the moon, right? How many hours do you have to arrive in advance of that trip? Like, if you go to O'Hare, you got to arrive there an hour in advance if you're not checking bags. If you go to LaGuardia, 2 hours, right? You're gonna miss your flight. Imagine you have a trip to the moon, right? It's a wedding day for a child. You're gonna get there early. And that's that attitude. Everything's been checked, everything's packed. You're gonna review in your head. Did I get everything? You're going to go over your list again. Right? So things that are that crucial. And if that's the case, if you know in a few minutes, or in a certain amount of time, you're going to have to stand before Hashem. I'm going to be as if to say a partner with God in the creation of the world. Livnot, to build, lintoa, to plant, kama olamos, worlds, sakin riboy olamos, to repair myriads of worlds, kocho delyonim, sidur merkava, l'chenetzam zechuta yagen olenu, and also the people who did this for many years. Kvar kama shot lifnei kol tefillah hayu merukazim shukayim. Chazal, the Gemara says, used to spend an hour or more beforehand. Shakuim, fully immersed, prepared in the preparation for the avoda that sits before them. So again, it's a matter of envisioning, knowing that what you're about to do is very important. It's going to require separate time, and that wherever you are, you're actually going to fix something and do something that nobody else in the world has ever done in that place in that time before. Even if it is a shul, and even if it is your makom, nobody else is you, and nobody else is davened in the coming mincha that you're about to daven in. So that prayer is so unique, it's so singular, and it's the only time to do it. There will never be this combination again in the history of tefillah. Right? That will never repeat itself. And that's what the 10 people are thinking when they come to Shacharis in the morning. Avalanu, kama kasha lanu l'chavim betefila. How difficult is it to focus on tefillah? Shekol tefillah matchilim anu lachshov alea l'chavein ba. I'm going to actually repeat this on Shabbos, so get people to motivate people to come to Shacharis. Chavein ba. We have a guest speaker who's going to be before Shacharis. He's actually coming to Shkama and to Maine, and he's going to run to the Sfardim. He's running all over town. He's going to Rogers Park also. It's called Shnat HaSheva. It's talking about a unique new organization with Shemitah, where they're not only they supporting, they're not doing the head to mechir, they're doing otzer based in, so everybody's happy about that. But they're also not supporting the Arab farmers in the process. They're supporting the Jewish farmers through an otzer based in. Then they're sending the fruits at cost to all the yeshivas, from the religious Zionist yeshivas to the Haredi yeshivas. So they're getting actually good fruit. We never had good fruit in school, in yeshiva. And instead of enriching right now the supermarkets in Israel are taking advantage of this situation. They increased the price for the Shemitah produce. Once they do the business, they found a distributor to do it at cost also. So the farmers are being paid. The what do you call it? The Basin owns the produce. It's hefker basically. It's basically belonging to a co-op, and the co-op buys the produce for Shemitah, and then it's not supporting the. People don't want to support the Arab produce in Israel. They don't mind buying French produce or American produce. They really are sensitive about that idea because a lot of them feel like the money is being taken away and given over to Hezbollah and Hamas. So So then they're going to be taking that. So that's what the speaker is going to talk about this idea on Shabbos. But maybe I'll spend 5 minutes at some point to push about tefillah. So yeah, question.
What about people who is davening in Israel in the past?
What about them?
Yes, so like you say, anywhere that we are.
Yeah.
When we start davening is something.
So I don't judge their kavanah or their focus. So I must believe that obviously if they've done their job to prepare for that tefillah, then they're fixing that.
They're fixing something
Yeah,
that is in the
Vade.
moment.
Vade, for sure.
That's what I think when I see people. Because
Yeah.
When I,
Yeah.
when I passed to Istanbul, a lady was almost entered of the airplane. She was davening with the siddur, and I say, wow. And I came out from Istanbul, and I went to davening outside because I say Avinu was near here. And I'm one of the promise that Hashem did.
So
everywhere we are.
So Hashem is everywhere, and everywhere in the universe we want to make a takana, a little tikkun, obviously. So I think it's not for us to judge. Back to your question, what someone's motivations are, and I believe that people are probably pure and they've prepared. And for us, at least, wherever we find ourselves, you find yourself on a long bus ride and you can't get off the bus. Sometimes you can't even stand on the plane, right? To sit in your seat and daven. I don't always think it's proper to stand up on a plane and make a minyan and push people around who don't and block the aisles in a dangerous way. I think it's probably better to sit in your seat and daven on a plane. That's my approach. Some people disagree, which is fine.
I admire them.
Right.
Because when they're doing the shacharit on the airplane,
Everyone has a different perspective to it. I'm not comfortable with it. I think it's potential for a great Chil Hashem. I think it's a problem to block the aisles. I don't think there are people who have to use the bathroom. That's also a problem. And you're standing there and you're daven because you have a form minyan, so you can have a minyan sitting in your seat. You can sit in your seat and daven and be chidus also. I think that's also okay if you're on the plane. Now, that's just the reality. Other people feel differently about that, and that's you have to ask who you want to ask about that. If you're asking me, I would say sit in your seat, unless the culture is on that plane where they kind of expect it, and they say that, sometimes there are planes where they say at this time there will be a minyan, and everybody's getting up, and everybody's sort of okay with that. That does happen, but sometimes it's unacceptable, and we have to look around to get a sense of what's happening. What you should absolutely always do on a plane is bring way too many bags, put them on top, and then every 5 minutes get up, make the person next to you stand up, and then unload the bags and unload them in the aisle, and make sure that you have both Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam tefillin to take up maximum amount of space. Okay, aval anu kama kasha lanu lechavein betfila. How hard is it to? Because she called tefillah mitchilim anu lachshov alea lechavein ba soch kedei dibar letchilasa shehochem derech pitom niskarim shelo yitpal mincha omat yafor zmana. In other words, it's so difficult because when we are traveling, we do have that suddenly, whoops, I better remember this. It's every day, right? When you want to go to sleep. Suddenly, I am done marv yet. And get out of bed and you have to get dressed again. You're done marv. Tefillah always is pitom. It's always suddenly because it's every day, right? That's by the way, having a seder is a good thing. Having organized order in your life is great for learning, for chesed, for doing your chores in your home and with children, with family. It's good to have seder. If you don't have seder, everything's going to feel like it's last minute. Everything's going to feel chaotic. Especially with me, it's with learning. It has to be like that. And then it's going to be rushed. And it's going to be a little bit off the. Not focused. But if you regularly engage in preparation, if you regularly engage in preparation and it becomes by rote, where you know that part of your daily schedule is you're going to spend 5 minutes preparing your thoughts, organizing your ideas, getting yourself dressed and washed properly. Not that you're dreaming dreams that one day I'll do it, at least palakach. An actual plan. So that way I actually have a plan of action, how to stand in tefillah mode, stand for God, call chag if you based on your own ability, Betfilas Yom Yom every day. V'miuchad tefillah shispalo, tefillah that I'm davening now. V'eino makomo haragil, especially the prayers that you're davening when you're not in the right place, when you're out of town, right? When you're away game. Kol hamitzvos miuchad. I always like in sports away games, they have the special uniforms that the basketball team wears when they're playing away versus home. It's really an amazing. I didn't see the game yesterday. It was really cool. The Warriors were playing in Dallas. Dallas won, Mavericks won, but it was raining so hard in Dallas. I called my chavrus up who lives in Dallas, and he said that I said, "Is it pouring?" He goes, "Yes." I said, "How do you know?" I said, "Because it's raining. It was the first basketball game ever that had a rain delay. It was actually raining it was going through the roof. Yeah, through onto the court. Yeah. So I was thinking that when you're in a away game, things happen, and you're not set for what's going to happen now, the temperature, the weather, all those things. So that requires extra preparation, especially when you're traveling. When you're traveling, tell yeshiva students when you leave yeshiva, have a plan when you're on vacation. Seder, what are you going to learn every day? Don't let things, gotta go. Gotta get to Minyan, gotta go shir. Or that you'll leave darkness, go to light. It doesn't even need a separate seder. Just if you're sitting at a meal and you're going to daven mincha afterwards, say, in a few minutes we're going to be daven mincha. What are we going to think about? And bring it up as a topic. When you're walking to shul, right? When you're driving to shul, shut the radio off and think about how you're going to use that time to daven, right? Od ma'aruvas v'ot tefillah mida. I'm going to be davening Shemesrei soon. It's not a tokef. Kiddush Hayom. And now let us consider the Kiddush Hayom. That's not a tokef. It was obviously Yom Kippur there, but let us contemplate the holiness of this moment. What moment? Gam kol yom yom, every day. Kihu norav hayom, for it is glorious, wondrous. You'll reach a tremendous level, a lofty level in prayer. Ashrei lo, praiseworthy someone who can do this. So with that, we'll pause for this week, and we're almost near the ending. And on page Kuf Pei, and God willing, next week we will continue again.